If they're not that serious about the case, they'll just let it languish on someone's desk until finally, 7 months later, someone says, oh, yeah, well, this has been sitting there. This guy hasn't been back in trouble. We're not going to pursue this. Close it out. We're the Arms Attorneys. Today we're talking about how you get your gun back from police after it's been confiscated. Stick around. We're going to talk about what questions you need to ask, what your considerations are, and finally, what our strategy is for getting our clients' guns back. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And I consider this a part-time job, beating guns out of police departments,
Sure.
getting them back to their rightful owners. And, this is one of those questions where, do you need a lawyer? No. Does it help a lot? Yeah. It does help a lot. But, here's the most troubling part about all this. The cost to hire an attorney oftentimes greatly eclipses the value of a firearm. And so police departments know what they're doing. They're just confiscating guns. No people are going to give up. It really grinds my gears.
Yes, it is very, very frustrating because what I can get done, even though it is not legal work, but what I can get done is far superior to what you can get done. And that is ridiculous because you are the person whose property has been interfered with.
Yeah. And, I thought we had these things called due process rights. Can't
Nah.
take life, liberty, property without due process. Police departments,
Not here.
straight into the, what do they call it? The rectangle filing cabinet. Is that what they call the trash can?
No.
So I think we start the conversation with, there's a million different little paths this can go down, but I'll say the big fork in the road right at the beginning is, have you been charged with a crime or have you not been charged with a crime? And I think that's a good place to start.
That is a good place to start because if you have been charged with a crime, well, sorry, your gun is what we used to say, evidence.
Evidence of a crime.
There was a police officer once who, he on scene. That's what he told one of our coworkers when he was like, "What are you even searching for? Why are we here with this warrant?" And he said, "We're searching for evidence." Yes, so it is evidence. Now, is it evidence that directly correlates to the crime you're accused of? Maybe, maybe not. But I'll tell you, if they confiscate it when you get arrested, they're going to argue all day long that it is evidence of something, and you are probably not going to get it back till the case is disposed of.
Correct. And so, again, you're going to have to lean heavily on your state's law. A lot of them say, guess what? This is how we handle property. This is how we handle evidence. And I'll say for those folks, if you have been charged with a crime, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the fact is, you're not going to get your gun back until the case is resolved.
Right, and probably resolved by some sort of dismissal, because I'll tell you, at least in Texas here, if you plead to anything, part of that plea bargain is likely going to be destruction or forfeiture of the firearm. So I don't know which one is worse. How do they even destroy firearms?
I think I've seen them smash them.
Smash. I was going to say Galveston prisoners just are allowed to do it.
Yeah.
There was a controversy once in which they were allowing Galveston jail inmates to destroy firearms, and someone pocketed one and was trying to make it functional.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't let the inmates be in charge of firearm destruction, but yeah, they're either going to destroy it, or I don't know what's worse, that, or it's going to get forfeited to a police
training.
Well, yeah, but remember they used to give them to the DAs too. All of a sudden, a police officer or a district attorney is like, "Oh, sweet new gun the state lets me carry now, and it's yours."
Yeah.
What's worse? They're both bad.
Well, and I'll say, here's kind of a pro tip to insert here. If it looks like, because ultimately, just because you did it doesn't mean they can convict you of it or that you're guilty. Let's say your case is going to, they have overwhelming evidence against you. The state's not going to relent. There's a high likelihood of conviction at trial, so you either decide to take a plea agreement or go to trial and are not successful. I think what's important is letting your attorney know that, getting this gun back to you ultimately is a priority to you, because that's what an attorney's job is. They explain the different paths or options, the pros and cons of each of those, and then ultimately you're the captain of the ship. You tell them, what you want to do, and so they'll try to fit that into that journey for you
where possible.
Yeah, where possible. And sometimes, there'll be cases where it's like, look, man, they're going to dismiss the case if they just get rid of the gun.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
And I hate for some clients, especially, and these are cases where there's overwhelming evidence of, hey, look, they're going to secure a conviction against you. I let them know, all right, we can fight for the gun, or you can have a guaranteed dismissal, be free, man. Totally up to you. Whatever you do, decide, that's great. But you see the government kind of plays little tricks with that.
Absolutely. So next scenario, you weren't arrested, but you interacted with police in a way that they are investigating you for a crime. Most of the time, when I see this happen, I would say 80% of the time, there was some sort of road rage called in.
Sure.
You are defending yourself on the road, but you are the guy with the firearm. Police can't decide which guy is lying. They take your gun, and you're like, okay, I wasn't charged with anything. I want it back. Are you going to get it back?
We'll put a pin in it, maybe.
Put a pin in it.
But this also comes up in, extremely clear-cut self-defense shootings
That
where,
too.
hey, look, we all know you saved a bunch of lives. You're going to get a medal from the governor. We're still going to collect this as evidence.
They took Jack Wilson's gun for what? Almost a year?
Yep.
More
Yep.
than a year, maybe?
And
Yeah.
so, it's all going to depend on, all right, do they have probable cause that this is a piece of evidence that leads to, potentially a conviction for this crime? If the answer is yes, then guess what? The police are going to hold this as evidence of the crime. How long can they hold this thing?
The entire statute of limitations if they choose.
Yeah.
So years, always years. Now, will they the whole time? Sometimes, we when you are being investigated for something, we highly recommend that you do not badger them for that firearm for quite some time, because often, if they're not that serious about the case, they'll just let it languish on someone's desk until finally 7 months later, someone says, oh yeah, well, this has been sitting there. This guy hasn't been back in trouble. We're not going to pursue this. Close it out. Whereas if you start pecking at them a week later or 2 weeks later, they're like, man, this guy's just a squeaky wheel and we're sick of dealing with him. And so let's go ahead and charge him.
Yeah, in this case, the grease is a criminal charge.
Yes. So it is, not guaranteed that you lose it for the entire statute of limitations, but there's a waiting game to be played, because oftentimes you start calling and badgering immediately, you're going to badger your way into an arrest, which is unfortunate. Shouldn't be the way that it happens, but we see it over and over again.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many clients have, I'll explain to them, hey, guess what? I will absolutely request the return of your firearm. Just understand, on the flip side of this, that does increase the chances of you getting arrested and charged with a crime. My strong advice would be to remain in the holding pattern, but totally up to you. You want me to go after this gun? I will totally do it.
We work for you.
But that's something you need to be aware of, and that's why it's really important, especially to have an attorney that understands how these jurisdictions work. Your attorney for your case will absolutely be able to let you know what's advisable.
Yes. So, okay, let's talk about your gun was confiscated and there is no possible way they're even investigating you for a crime. So this happens when I talk to people a lot. They have had a negligent discharge.
Oh yeah, that
Right.
happens a lot.
Yep.
Accidents, not crime.
Accidents are not crimes. Well, in most jurisdictions, I think California criminalizes having one and not calling it in within a certain amount
Yeah,
of
there's
time.
a couple where you have a duty to report a negligent discharge.
Right. So, I mean, you never know. You go too far west, too far northeast, but for the most part, not a criminal act. So you've got that. You've got, gosh, they took it off me when they came out for something else that I wasn't really involved in, but they took it, which they will do from time to time. I want it back. How do we do it? And I will say, when I talk to these people, they're almost always telling me, I've been calling and calling and calling and leaving voicemails and no one will talk to me. And that's where the lawyer actually gets through. The police will call the lawyer back when I'm like, I am the counsel for blah, blah, blah. I am trying to get a hold of detective so-and-so. Call me at my office. They'll generally do it.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday we have had a gun that's been tied up for like a year. Had an FRT in it. Guess what? Lots of developments on that. We probably need to cover those. But my client, well, he's been asking for some help. Has been in constant contact with this detective, getting no response. I sent one email yesterday, and within 30 minutes, it's like,
Yeah.
he can come get his gun.
Right. So, I mean, it helps, but there's
That's attorney magic right there.
That is attorney magic. There's one more thing that really grinds my gears, and that's that even once released, oftentimes, right? Or let's say we get a court order for release, which we
Yep.
have to do sometimes.
I've had to change what my court order looks like a dozen times over
They
a
still don't
decade.
follow them though.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is like, I had one recently where it was a negligent discharge. The detective, I badgered the detective. He looked and said, yep, it's cleared for release. And then we get to the property room and they're like, well, yeah, whatever it was, the homicide and blah, blah, major crimes cleared it for release, but we still got to send the trace to the ATF. No, you don't. No, you don't. And that's tough. And without a court order, that's tough too, because then you're just fighting on the phone about like, I don't give a shit what your in-house policy is on this. This is deprivation of property without color of law.
Right.
I mean, give it back right now. And then it's just a matter of like, you have to spend multiple hours going up the chain on the phone until you finally get to the lawyers for the police department who will actually see reason and just say, guys, just turn it over.
Yeah, I got in a fight one time over, we had a court order in place and it had the phrasing, shall immediately release and return to my client, the firearm. And they had, I think they got wind of this order and sent it off to the ATF, and just they're like, hey, this is going to take 3 months or whatever. I was like, okay, cool. I need to subpoena all of you to show cause of why you think this judge's order is just toilet paper or whatever. And it's really funny. We got his gun back in like 24 hours.
I've had to threaten a show cause too, and that's when the police lawyers get involved, and they're like, guys, just do it.
A court has ordered you.
I know, really, you kind of have to deal with that. But all of that to say, again, you don't need a lawyer for this, but boy, do they make it difficult for the average person. Because imagine without one, you're just living in that world where they won't return your phone calls until what? Until your property gets lost or rusted, or God knows what the cocaine rats are doing with it in there.
Yeah, cocaine rats.
They're doing dope rips with it.
But things that you should be aware of. Let's say, all right, you want to go this alone. Some things that you need to consider are statute of limitations. Extremely important. If you have, like, let's say there is a low likelihood of getting charged, and again, there's a lot of different crimes, so you need to make sure, all right, this could be 10 different crimes.
Yep.
What are the statute of limitations
various,
for each of those? Because, for example, we have some crimes that are 2 years, some years that are crimes that are 5 years. So just knowing all that, communication to the detective, the person who sees the firearm, and then really it is, for the most part, just working your way up the chain of command. But I can't emphasize this enough. It's probably a good idea. It might be in your best interest to have a lawyer for this.
Yeah, I wish that wasn't the case.
No.
But it does keep us in business.
Sure.
So I guess I'll take that.
But we hope you enjoy this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And as always, leave us a question or comment below. Until next time, we're the Arms Attorneys.